Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining me here today. If you'd like to follow along, we'll be starting the 26th chapter of the book of Acts, where Paul is going to give his statement, his defense to Agrippa. So Agrippa said to Paul, "You have permission to speak for yourself." Then Paul stretched out his hand and made his defense. First of all, let me say there, Paul stretching out his hand was a sign of respect. It was an honorable salute. I'll use that word, but again, it aligns with what Paul has taught us already when he tells us that we are to submit to the government authorities, because all authority ultimately does come from God. And even if the person in the position may not be honorable or worthy, the position itself was still created by God. And so Paul is again lining up his own life with what he had taught previously about our respect for authorities. And as he does this, he goes on then and he is wise when he says, "I consider myself fortunate that it is before you, Agrippa, that I get to make my defense." And so Paul is, let's face it, he's buttering Agrippa up. He's trying to get on his good side. I mean, his life hangs in the balance, so there's nothing wrong with that. And then he's going to move in and begin to give the story of his conversion. And this is the third time now that Paul's conversion has been given in Scripture for us, and it is certainly an example of the life-changing, transforming power of God, of the change that was made in his life. And so, as we look at this again, this testimony from Paul, again, it was very. His raising of the hand was again just a sign of respect that he was showing Agrippa. He wasn't really again, on one hand, he wasn't flattering him, but he was making sure that, again, he didn't want to be on Agrippa's, again, when I say flatter, it wasn't nauseating, kind of thing. How we've all seen people trying to get on somebody's good side, but Paul is wanting to make the best of the situation. And I'm sure that on this regard, he says, I consider myself fortunate that I'm going to make my defense before you. Again, I think Paul was being very honest and legitimate there. He was thankful for the opportunity to give his defense that Agrippa and others were not going to take the word of these angry, militant Jews, but he was going to have an opportunity to speak before Agrippa. In doing so, he's going to be able to present his testimony. Most of all, he's going to be able to talk about God. Talk about salvation, talk about Jesus. Agrippa's going to have to hear that. To sit there and rule on this case, he was going to have to hear about Jesus. He is also I'm sure glad to be making this defense before Agrippa, because Agrippa would have had some knowledge. He had basic knowledge of Jewish laws and Jewish practices, and so the events he's going to talk about are not only understandable and known to Agrippa, where another king, another judge in this situation may have looked at what Paul was talking about and thought of him as strange or weird, but Agrippa was at least aware. And then Paul does something that I think is really interesting. He says, "Be patient with me. Give me a chance." And so Paul knew, one thing Paul knows at this point, this court cannot release him. He already knew that, but he did want to begin to lay out his defense before whatever people came along. He wanted to be whatever rulers came across his path. And again, he wanted to ultimately be able to share the good news of Christ with these people. And also, here again, just as with Festus prior, here we're going to have somebody else who potentially will say, "I don't see anything wrong with him." And so those who are looking at his life and saying, "Yeah, I really don't understand why he's on trial." That number is growing, and hopefully, that as Paul works his way towards standing before Caesar, that those numbers would grow. And when Caesar hears the case, that he'll take that into account as well. And so Paul says, be patient. This is going to take a little while. I want to share with you my story, share my history with you, and see that I'm not guilty. And for me, that just stands as a very stark reminder of how the believer should live their life, that we should live our life, that the more people examine it, the more people who look at our life, the more people who hear our story, the more people who say, yeah, man, this is the real deal. I think all of us are aware of the cost, the danger of those who claim to be Christian, but truthfully live a very wicked and oftentimes ungodly life. But Paul puts his out here. He lets Felix, Festus, now Agrippa, he's letting people look at his life and examine his situation. And so, just again, Paul is just a walking, talking example and model for us. And once again, he shows us the great importance of being sure that our life, that our testimony, what we say we believe, matches how we live, and that no matter who examines it, they see our relationship with Christ come through. Think about it. You're going to run into a lot of people today. Some will know you, some won't. Will your life match up to the gospel you proclaim? You have a good day. We'll see you here tomorrow morning.